friends, it's Aki Dearest. Anime nosebleeds. The classic trope of anime where a character is typically thrown into a situation in which they are confronted with another attractive character. This creates an overwhelming amount of emotional stress onto the main character, causing their blood pressure to rise, leading to what is the classic anime nosebleed. These nosebleeds tend to be over the top for comedic values, such as from a leaking faucet, to a rocket launch, to just a straight up geyser, with the character somehow still alive by the end of it. I don't know why. It's just the way it is. In this video, I want to try and mathematically see how much blood is lost in one of these nosebleeds. And don't worry, I'll try and save you guys the headaches by comprising all the numbers and explanations in this video as simple as possible. So the character I want to use as an example for today's video is Sanji from One Piece. This is a character, if you guys don't know, that is quite famous for nosebleeds. And out of all moments that Sanji ever had to skyrocket himself with a nosebleed, I thought that the perfect one to use was the one that he did in episode 528. Because it is what I believe to be the maximum amount of blood loss he had ever lost in the entire series, based off of the information that was given off of episode 528 and the following episode afterwards, in which he needed a blood transfusion. Now, there's two things I want you guys to keep in mind before I display all this information to you. Listen closely. 1. We have to apply the laws of physics here. 2. You have to remember that the laws of physics do not apply in anime. Trying to make sense in a world where nothing makes sense in the first place. This is gonna be fun. There was pretty much absolutely no clue to give me exactly how much blood left Sanji's body, but there is something that exists in real life that we can use as a leeway. There is what exists a pretty little table called the hemorrhage shock classification. In short, this is a chart that is used to get an idea of what to expect when you lose a certain amount of blood. So you have classes 1, 2, 3, and 4, not only with the percentages of blood, but also what to expect when someone loses that amount, and also the treatments that are likely needed in the case of those situations. Are you still with me? Since I don't have the profession in the medical field, based off of this anime and what we can see on this chart, it's likely that Sanji is somewhere between 3 and 4. Class 3 is when you lose 30 to 40%. In this case is when your blood pressure drops and your heart rate goes up. In this case, you will also need a blood transfusion. But class 4 is also when you need immediate and aggressive attention, or else, you know, you're going to die. The first thing I wanted to figure out was exactly how high did that blood even go in the first place? What was the maximum peak when Sanji's nosebleed erupted? There were a couple of things in this episode that I tried using, such as the boat off to the right, the mountains over to the left. Why not compare his body to something else that actually has the stats already there in front of me? I said, you know, Sanji's blood eruption already looks like a geyser. It pretty much is one. So why not just compare it to a geyser? And I thought of no other better candidate than the only one that I even know of, was Old Faithful in the Yellowstone National Park. So here are the stats for Old Faithful. It's very possible that Sanji's blood went somewhere between 106 to 185 feet, and wow, he lost 3,700 gallons of blood in his body? Actually, no, not necessarily, and here's why. Old Faithful gives off 3,700 to 8,400 gallons of blood, but that's over the course of 1.5 minutes to 10 minutes. In Sanji's case, it was much, much shorter than that. Let's count. 10 seconds. Sanji's eruption lasted for 10 seconds. So let's go back to the table. Let's say that he was put into class 3 of losing at least 30% of the blood in his entire body. So let's take all these pretty numbers from Old Faithful and let's just take 30% of that. Now you have Sanji. If Sanji's condition is 30% of what was given off at the geyser, then he lost approximately 200 gallons of blood, which means that he has a total of somewhere between 500 to 670 gallons of blood, or if you want to be precise, 666. Imagine the stress on his heart to pump out 200 gallons of blood simultaneously out of his body. Why don't we figure that out? Luckily enough, in this episode, you can hear how much his heart was pumping at this time. Let's look at that. Now that is still very much over the normal heart rate per minute, but nowhere near enough pressure that is enough to simultaneously blow out 200 gallons of blood into the air, approximately 185 feet into the air. This is the part where, you know, the laws of physics really don't apply in anime. And you know, Sanji's human, that's completely normal to just run a really excruciating laps and then you just pump out 200 gallons of blood if you see a hot girl on the way. I know that none of this makes any logical sense, but here's where it gets even weirder. In the next episode, you see that Sanji's in bed and he has a blood transfusion being given to him. And if you look closely and count how many packets of blood are being pumped, I know for comedic value, the show knew that he lost quite a bit. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 packets of blood. 1 packet of blood is only 1 pint. So you're telling me that the doctors expected to pump back 200 gallons of blood into Sanji with only 5 pints, or 5 little tiny packets of blood, which were generously donated by these twins right here, which means that both of them donated approximately 2.5 packets of blood each. That's very generous, that's really great, but it makes no logical sense. I mean, 5 pints of blood versus 200 gallons, Sanji would still be in a coma by this point. I'm about to go deeper down the rabbit hole here. Realistically speaking, exactly how many blood packets would have needed to be pumped back into Sanji so that he can get 200 gallons back, get up and running, go on adventures, regardless of the fact that he already did that right after the twins showed up? Cause logic. And that would just be a simple search on the internet or simple math where you just convert how many pints of blood does it take to fill up 200 gallons. And if you really don't want to look it up, here's the answer. You need 1,600 packets of blood to pump back into Sanji before you can hope to have him filled up with 200 gallons. But in this episode, you know, it made sense. Fill up 200 gallons with 5 pints of blood and you're good. Though imagine how different this scene would have looked if you actually drew up 1,600 packets of blood. That means they probably would have had 1,600 tubes in his entire body. And then they would all probably be piled up in the corner of the room. There's space over there. I think there's enough. Maybe that entire room. I wonder how many people that would take. Well, we take these 2 twins because apparently, according to the episode, they were the only 2 people that donated blood. And since there's 5 packets of blood, that means that they donated 2.5 packets of blood each. So assuming that all of us donated 2.5 pints of blood, you would have needed 634 people donating to Sanji. But not only that, it would be very difficult because in the episode it said that these are the only 2 people that were available to donate blood back into Sanji because they're the only 2 people they could find that had the same blood type as Sanji in the first place.
血液の提供者が見つかって本当によかった。
So for the sake of this entire series, you would have needed an entire arc of the entire team just leaving the hospital, going out to find 634 people to donate blood to Sanji, provided if they'll even do it or not. But that would have taken up the whole arc, and by the time they come back, well, Sanji would most likely be dead, and that would have changed the course of One Piece very drastically, now wouldn't it? In conclusion, logic doesn't make any sense. What would even cause something like that? Well, there are symptoms that I were looking up on chronic nosebleeds. You've got emotional and physical stress, which is a huge factor in the series, and that could definitely be a problem that Sanji has because, you know, emotional stress with all of the women and the breasts next to him, and just the physical stuff that he has to go through the series, but there must be something else. Ah, smoking. So what did we learn from this entire video, kids? Don't smoke. You'll lose 200 gallons of blood in your body.